Welcome to Divorce Explained. I'm joined today by my colleague Steve Benmore, and we have a really interesting topic. And as you can see, we have a special guest. So today we're going to be talking about why do divorcing spouses spend so much money fighting over money, and is it really about the money? And we're joined today by Patrick Kilbane, who is an attorney as well. He had a successful law practice in matrimonial and family law. He's the director of the divorce advisory group for Ullmann Wealth Partners in Jacksonville Beach, Florida, which is where I'd rather be right now than here in Toronto, Canada, where it's cold. Patrick is also a certified divorce financial analyst, and he is the author of a book called Move Forward Confidently, a high net worth woman's guide to divorce. And interestingly, with this book, if you purchase it, and we can put links with the podcast, the proceeds are donated to domestic violence shelters. So definitely check out Patrick's book, and welcome to the podcast, Patrick.
Thank you so much, Leanne. It's wonderful to be here.
Well, why don't we start by having you just tell us a little bit about the type of work that you do in the business that you're in right now.
Great. Thank you. So I litigated high net worth, complicated divorce cases for a decade. And I was so blessed to work with amazing people and practicing law. Unfortunately, that attorney-client relationship is very transactional. You represent somebody, for the most part, it's done at the conclusion of the case. And I represented my now business partner in his divorce in 2008 and really got to see how much he enjoyed working with clients for, multi-decades. And I thought, wait a minute, instead of, being done with that relationship, I want to have the fun he's having. And I would get to see people in their divorce process and then see them years down the line when I met up with him, or whether they were a referral that I gave to him to help them manage the money. And these people had totally transformed. And I said, well, wait a minute, I don't want to do all the hard work all the time. I want to have fun with these wonderful people and help them reestablish themselves. And so that's how I've sort of made that transition. And I have to tell you, professionally, it's absolutely the best thing I've ever done.
That's amazing. Now, I know that the book that you wrote really speaks about divorcing in a high net worth situation. And my guess is in most of those cases, that tremendous wealth was accumulated by one of the two spouses. And let's just be frank, in most cases, it's probably the husband that accumulated the wealth and then helping the woman, the wife in the situation, deal with it is a particular paradigm, because I know as a divorce litigator, mediator, and arbitrator that oftentimes the person that is being asked for sharing of their wealth protects it and fights really hard to not let go of it, almost like that's their first wife. So when we talk about the psychology of the high net worth divorce, what have you learned along the way about the person that is trying to access their share of the net worth and the person that is trying desperately to not release any portion of it?
Steve, you make an excellent point, and there's a lot of questions within your question. So let me start off with a big picture answer that is I would say is a qualified yes. So one of the spouses may have been the one outside of the home in the marketplace, but I would argue that some of the people that I work with have put their careers on hold and followed the one spouse who may have generated all of the assets. So in the United States, we definitely, look at if that money was accumulated during the marriage, whether it was by one spouse or joint spouses, it is the party's assets. And so, in most marriages, the spouses, they divide and conquer, right? If they have a lot of kids, one has a very demanding career that requires a lot of travel and or a lot of time away from the home. And a lot of times the people that I work with are very sophisticated and they haven't had the opportunity, or it wasn't their responsibility to handle the finances in the last 30 years. So a lot of my work is sort of helping them re-enter that financial arena, educate them, and give them the confidence to help them make their financial decisions.
Now, a lot of women are uncomfortable with money. And, I know I come across lots of women in my law practice and in my travels through my life. And often women seem to be just less comfortable with money and how their skills in terms of investing money, preserving money, generating money. I mean, I think research shows women tend to, when they're negotiating salaries and things like that, we ask for, less than we might be worth, whereas men are stronger at asking for maybe more than they're worth. And so what's some advice that you have for women on how we can do better and have that confidence as we negotiate money matters like a divorce?
Really good question. I think a lot of it boils down to just making sure that, I listen to them. A lot of these women have had the financial affairs dictated to them and told them that this is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to spend. And they've never really, or it's been many, many years since they've had an opportunity to participate. And then all of a sudden, because of the divorce, they're thrust into a situation where they are the sole decision maker in an area that wasn't their primary responsibility during the marriage. So making sure that I'm very careful, that I slow down, I listen to them, I explain to them what's going on, not in a condescending or patronizing way, but make sure that I help them be a co-decision maker so they eventually gain the confidence and the comfort to be able to confidently make those financial decisions.
I'm looking at your book, and specifically one of your chapters deals with which attorney or lawyer should you hire. And, I can't tell you in my last 30 plus years of practicing law, how much I have arrived at the place that no two lawyers are the same. Yet the public seems to think that if you need a divorce lawyer, they're all the same. And so I'm curious to hear, given that, you've authored a book and a chapter on distinguishing and discerning the kind of lawyer that you need, what would you say are some of the top ideas that somebody should look for when they're in the middle of a divorce and it's a high net worth family?
I probably could not have planted a better question. And I think when I meet with somebody who's going through the divorce, if I'm fortunate to get them at that point in the relationship where they haven't decided on attorney, it's all about trying to figure out what's the most important issue to them in their case. Some family attorneys love child custody cases. Some family attorneys don't want to touch a child custody case with a 10-foot pole. And on the other side of that coin, there are some family attorneys that are excellent with financial matters and taxes. And there are some that prefer not to deal with dollars and cents whatsoever. So you're in Toronto. It would seem to me that even though you have awesome family attorneys in Montreal, wouldn't you want one in Toronto that goes in front of the judge or the barrister that you're going to see on a daily basis? That, and that doesn't guarantee a win. But in every province or every city, any courtroom, they all have their own unique local rules, local customs, that I think it's so much better to have a lawyer who's very familiar with those unwritten rules or local customs or maybe the judge's pet peeves. That's who you want leading you into battle. And so I think, and maybe it's worth at least 80%. 80% of the way I can get there if I can help somebody get the right attorney.
That's so important. So I'm going to put you on the spot with my next question. The title of our podcast is Why Do Divorcing Spouses Spend So Much Money Fighting Over Money? And is it really about the money? And what's your response to that?
That's a loaded question, Leanne. Certainly if the majority of their money is spent dealing with child custody issues, then there's probably nothing more priceless to the people who are litigating. If you're spending a lot of money to fight over money, then I think we have a different question. And I would think, again, if you get the right lawyer who can help quantify what we're actually fighting about and help people make business decisions in divorce cases, then that will probably go a long way. And I think in my experience, and I see Steve nodding his head, some lawyers, in the United States, you'll see often the title attorney and counselor at law. And I think the counseling part is what's left behind in a lot of attorney-client relationships, where you can tell somebody, yes, absolutely, you may be shortchanged here, or you may be entitled to this, but is it really worth it? Are you willing to spend 2X to recover X and be the leader in that relationship? And I think that's really what I've seen my career get further and further left behind.
It's funny you say that. Somebody once said to me, perfection is the enemy of good. And I always thought, what does that even mean? Like, I don't quite get that. Some idioms sort of don't resonate with me. But I have a case right now. The names will be removed. But it's a couple in their 60s, and the couple together for 35 years have accumulated significant wealth, something in the tune of about $30 million. They will never be able to spend half of that money before they die. And the amount of money that each side is spending to fight over how that $30 million will be divided, to me, makes no sense and reminds me that perfection is the enemy of good. Because however you divide that $30 million, 15-15, 12-18, 10-20, any which way you slice it, each side will still eat the same breakfast, probably drive the same car, go on the same vacations. It will not in any way change their lives. Yet, they are after what they deem to be perfection, which is, I want these assets and I want it on these dates. And my point is that in divorce, I wish, to your point, it was a corporate decision where the accountant says to you, look, you know what? X dollars in an IRA equals Y dollars in a cash account. And trust me, you're fine either way, IRA, cash account. But yet people are measuring how well they did in their divorce, irrespective of whether it's good enough. And I'm just curious what you've observed in your sort of journey from, divorce lawyer to financial advisor, helping people with high net worth. Who do you ever say to them, you're going to be good either way?
Tell them that all the time. And again, I think it's my job. You're coming to me for professional advice to help them land that plane and help them see that bigger picture and just help them understand how much better they're going to be when they can move on to the next chapter of their lives if they get out of this mess that's the divorce system. And Steve, as you were sharing your experience just now, I was, thinking sometimes people spend a lot of money because they want to penalize the other person for whatever they perceived is, wrong. So maybe the legal fees are sort of punitive in nature, where, to your point, whether it's 12 million or 18 million, however they slice the pie up, either one of them is going to be eating peanut butter sandwiches for, their future meals. So they want to hold up a business deal. They want to hold up another, that person moving on with their lives because maybe they don't feel like they're going to. And right. I just tell people that I'm not, if you want to use this system in that manner, then, I'm going to respectfully decline to participate.
I guess at the core of why people spend so much money fighting over money is that they're making emotional decisions quite often. They're not, acting like a corporation, as Steve said a few minutes ago, or behaving logically. It's emotion driven. They want revenge, or they'd rather give the money to their lawyer than their spouse, and that sort of thinking. What tips do you have for our clients, your clients, on how they can reduce emotional decisions and protect their money and save money and not be throwing money after silly things?
To the extent they can involve a therapist if they're really having an emotionally challenging time with this, I mean, I think that's the best money that you can spend. And this is my thought. I've never written this or published it anywhere, but in business school, they talk about the product life cycle. And I think one of the reasons that a divorce is so challenging is because I think one of the spouses has made the decision to exit the marriage, and the other spouse may learn about that decision way later. And they're at different emotional phases in the divorce. And I think divorces end up when they both get to a place where they're sort of emotionally prepared to exit the marriage.
That's a brilliant answer, and you're 100% right. I remember when I was younger and I used to run track and field. Before I started, I didn't understand, why is every lane at a different location? Why aren't they all at the same start line? Of course, it didn't take me longer than a couple hours to figure out they're all exactly the same distance. It's just that you gotta start at a different. Anyway, but that's really the moniker for divorce, because when Jack and Diane split up, they don't both wake up on September 16 and go, today's the day that we've decided mutually that we're no longer together. One generally has been feeling this way for quite some time. Maybe the other side knows there's something going on, but they don't know what it is. Midlife crisis, difficulty at work, problems with their siblings. They make excuses. And then finally the ball drops and they say, I want out. And the other person is dumbfounded. They're like gobsmacked. And then along come the professionals, right? They call Patrick Kilbane and they go, we got to figure out how to divide our assets. Please speak to my husband or my wife, because you're our financial advisor, and explain to them how we can divide this up in a tax-friendly way. And so I'm guessing you have been put in the unenviable position at times of having to speak to both sides of the equation, because you're their financial advisor and you're trusted, and they know that you've got both their best interests in mind. And how do you navigate that conversation when you're dealing with the person that wants you to just break that stick in half and the other person that says, don't even talk to me about the stick?
So I'm going to partially reject your premise here a little bit, where you talk about unenviable position. And I actually appreciate the opportunity to talk to both spouses. I feel like I can do really, really good in that situation. And it's why I wrote the book. I try to pull back the curtain on the process, demystify it, and say, hey, look, nobody gave me a vote on whether you two should separate. Okay? So if you're coming to me and asking for my advice, this is the opportunity to do this in the most efficient and equitable way possible. And if you want to play that game, let's go. And so when I can actually get two spouses who will look to me and trust me, there's no higher professional responsibility or compliment, I feel, than to help that couple. And I welcome the challenge.
I think that's wonderful. Now, again, just before we wrap up, you have your book called Move Forward Confidently, A High Net Worth Woman's Guide to Divorce. And where can people buy that? Is it at Amazon?
Sure. It's available on Amazon. And the book was published 4 years ago. And even though it is addressed to the ultra high net worth audience, I think the same concepts apply also to the high net worth man. And some of my male friends, when I've given them the book, they say, "Nope, I don't want the book until you write one for the men." So that may have to be the next. That may have to be the sequel. But yes, it's available on Amazon. It's also available on audiobook for those who want to listen in the car or on the train or on the airplane or something. But I will say that if I wrote it to be sort of like a workbook, and there's a glossary and some checklists and flow charts. And so if you can get the book, I really think that the physical book is good to have around if you're in the throes of a divorce.
Well, on behalf of Steve and I would like to thank you so much for coming on our podcast, Divorce Explained. This has been really informative, and I'm sure our listeners will find this information very helpful. So thank you so much, Patrick.
Leanne and Steve, thank you both very much. Good to be with you today.
Thank you. And to our listeners, we'll be back again next time with another episode of Divorce Explained.